Hi friends, welcome to data science tutorial series. As part of this tutorial series, we are trying to understand data science via pandas. That means we are trying to apply pandas to carry out various data science related operations when we carry out data processing. So let's now try to get into this video. The topic for this video is basically pivot, or it is also called a pivot table. So before I take you to this presentation, I just want to first explain you the way in which we understand the pivot with respect to the Microsoft Excel. So let us say that I just have created some data, and let us say that this is the data of, say, serial number is there, and then these are the marks students have got. Say there are 13 students, and let's say that they have got some marks. Say somebody has got 50, then somebody has got 100 out of 100 in maths, like that. And these are the marks for English subject. So we have basically created this. Now, as part of this data, if I want to create a pivot, so what do I do? Basically, I will just say that I will go to insert and I will say pivot table. And in that case, when I select pivot table, and then basically I'm going to select the range of the table. Now let us say that I'm going to select the range as A to C. That is what basically automatically it has selected for us. Now if I say that I want to put it in a new worksheet for the time being. Okay, so let's now try to do that. So now we know that it has created a pivot sort of a table. So this is that pivot table. You can see this pivot table, and then this is the right portion, or this is the place where you can actually choose the field. You can do the drag and drop, or you can basically carry out the things. So like that I have done it here, because I just want to take you to the original sheet where we have the data, so that it is easier for me to explain. So this is the pivot table. That is what actually was drawn here as an empty one. So this is that pivot table. So let's go to this. So here, as we see, what we have done, there are now three fields. One is the serial number, then another is a maths, and another is an English. Obviously, serial number is of no interest to us. We are interested in the, say, maths and English. That is what makes sense for us. So we have now given here, you can see this is the column labels. So I want to basically carry out a summation of all the data or all the marks. Then here in this we have written sum of English and sum of maths. Now if I want to change this, and let's say that I don't want sum, I want to, let's say, take average marks of students, then we can simply say average. Now you see this has changed, and it is now average marks of maths. Now, similarly I can change it to here, say for example average, then okay. Then I can have another column where, suppose if I want say for example, suppose if I want now, so I can drag this here. Okay, now here this is the way it is going to show it to us, that now is this a good or not, that is a different thing, but what I'm trying to tell you, this is the way you try to create a pivot table. Now I don't want it like this, so I'm just reverting it back, because now we want here summation of values here. That is what we basically. Now if I remove this, suppose if I remove this, I'm not interested in this, I can remove this. Now what I have actually the row labels, which is of no use to me. So what I do, I basically try to now select, say, maths, then I'm going to get the sum of maths, and if I choose English, then I'm going to get the sum of English. Similarly, I can play with it. Now suppose if I want to play with, say, move row to label, move column to this one, so I can always play here like this. So I can do it like this. So maybe here we are currently considering row as the, or this can be roll number. So depends how you want to consider it. So like that we can play with it. Similarly, we can have it like this. So the way in which you basically work on pivot table with respect to the Excel, the similar concept, or on the similar lines, we can create pivot table in pandas and we can display it. So that is what basically the background with respect to the pivot table is. So let's now go with our presentation. So pivot table. So there is a support for pivot table in pandas. So essentially it's going to create a spreadsheet style pivot table as a data frame. So that is what I was trying to show you when I created an average and all that. So it creates a spreadsheet style pivot table. then the labels in the pivot table will be hierarchical. So that means you have, suppose if you have multi-index objects, then it can be like one below another, and it will be based on the index and the columns of the result data frame. So now this is basically like when you have a hierarchical data. Let us say that you have data related to a person. Now in that, suppose if it is a bank data, then typically you will have say 2-3 things as the first level. Say for example, his account number, his name, and probably the balance. Now you want to get some other details like say his address, his mobile phone number, his other say for example the in India we have this Aadhaar number and all that, so social security number and all that. So all those things, details can be there, which can be which can be part of the next hierarchy. So here also on the similar lines you can create the hierarchical indexes, pivot table with hierarchical indexes. So how do you do that? So basically you make use of pandas.pivot table. So there is a pivot table function. Now there are multiple parameters that normally we need to make use of that. So obviously first thing is you need to give the data frame, then you need to give the values column to aggregate. So we will see this when we go to the demo. Then index, so basically optional index, that is column, or you can have a grouper. So we will understand grouper in detail, and we will also basically make use of it because it's pretty interesting this one. So optional index can be there. Then you basically have, that is option index is an optional. Then columns. So when you have columns, again you can basically have column, grouper, array, or list of previous this one. Then you have this aggregate function. So using this aggregate function you can actually do the aggregate. So we will again see this in the demo. Then margins also we will see in the demo, where basically you can see like add all the rows or columns, or basically like for subtotal or grand totals and all that. So that we will see in the demo. So this point or this particular option will get clear. So let's now try to understand what is a grouper, because we need to make use of it as part of our demonstration. So grouper is, as the name says, it's going to group. So you can allows you to specify group by instruction for an object. That means you can group some few say rows, and then on that you can basically say you can do sum or whatever basically. So that grouping instruction is related to some criteria. So that is why it is called as instruction. Then it will select a column via the key parameter. That means we are going basically grouper is a pretty big function. The details can be you can read the details here. I have given you the links here. We are going to make use of key because it's basically it selects the grouping column of the target. And then frequency. So we basically, I told you, like there is a group of data, and what is the criteria? So we are going to specify that criteria as part of the frequency. And obviously when you do that, basically it's going to work on a date time like object. So the prerequisite when you want to make use of a grouper is basically you need to convert it into the date time like object. So that is what basically is about the grouper. So now what we will do is we will now try to understand the demo. So as a part of demo, basically we are going to make use of pivot to reshape or transform a data frame. Then we will try to set x-axis and row as x-axis and say column y-axis, and we'll generate the pivot table. So we will do that selection. Then we will basically change the index and columns. Then we'll do that aggregation which I just told you, like, and for that we are going to make use of NumPy. So we will make use of aggregate facility of NumPy. Then we will write our own custom aggregation. Then we will also see how do we make use of margin. And then we will try to basically make use of grouper along with the pivot table, because the grouper will allow me to create sort of a group of or some information which I want, and then I can basically give it to a pivot table. So that is what all these things we will try to see as part of the demo. So let's now go to the Jupyter, and we will basically go through this one by one. So basically the code I have written it because otherwise it is difficult to cover everything. So the code is written. So we'll first import pandas and NumPy. I told you for some of the functionality like aggregation and all that, we are going to make use of NumPy. Now we have basically some data, and let us say this is a data for multiple cities. So let me just, and in here we are reading the file, so there is nothing great, we are just reading the file which is basically CSV file, and we are just reading it using the pd.readcsv. So here we have the temperature and wind speed data. Now the same thing can be done, or a similar thing can be done even on the say stock data or a stock market data, where instead of say city you can have it as a stock name, then temperature, instead of temperature you can keep it as say earning per share, or say the EPS, earning per share, or say P by E, like price to earning ratio, or say if you want to do analysis on how the sales has grown, then sales data, or say how the EBIT has grown and like that. So basically we can do on the stock data also. However, it is easier for anybody to understand when we try to talk about temperature, then city of a temperature, then what is the speed of wind, like that. So it become easier for somebody to quickly understand the concept. However, this can be applied on as per your liking, or as per your other case studies like share data that I have told you, stock data. So here let us say that we have this file where there is a data of 5 days, so of January. So January 1st, then January 2nd, January 3rd, January 4th. So these are the rather 4 days of data. Again for another city, Nagpur in India, and then Paris in France. So that is what basically we have, and then the temperature and the wind speed. So it's a very relatively simpler data, and it's for the 4 days from 1st of Jan to 4th of Jan. Now we are going to set the x-axis and we are going to set the y-axis. Now the x-axis basically we want to set it as a date. So we just want to check how the date and then the city will be the column. So how this data is there with respect to the date and the column. So here I told you index plays a very important role. It's like an anchor. So that is what basically I was trying to explain you in the slide. So this is where that index. So index basically is a, obviously it can be optional, but it plays a very important role. So we will now try to take a look at it. So index, then here it is with respect to the date, and then the column is actually the city. So we have here the city as the column. So let's now try to, and you can see the way in which it is invoked is df.pivot. So now you can see this is the city and the date as the x-axis. So you can basically, so we set the date as basically set row, so it is a row. So you can see for each row there is a data, that's why it is a x-axis. So for each row, that is 1st of Jan, 2nd of Jan, like that. So there is a temperature and then there is a wind speed. So for this, the columns is what? City. So because the column is a city, what is common is temperature and wind speed. Now if I change it here, so for example if I would have done it temperature, then obviously it's going to look perhaps richer. Okay, so it's going to look ugly, that's fine, but the point is you can like create it like this. So let's not right now get into that. So we'll just have it city. So what will happen, you have now for every city like Nagpur, New York and Paris, similarly Nagpur, New York and Paris, you get the temperature, you get the wind speed. So it is a very nice way to get a snapshot how the weather conditions was there in say from 1st of January to 4th of January in across these different cities. Now we are basically going to check again, the index is going to be the date. Now we want basically columns is city, so that is the same thing. Now the values we want is, we are not interested in temperature. So for example I want to take a look at only wind speed. So here I will specify values. If I just run it, now you can see that it's not showing now anything like wind speed or something, because we know what we are doing. So it's a wind speed. So that's why that is the way you are going to get it. So you can see now this 5, 6, 20, 12, 7, 13. So that particular data has come. So if I just make it here temperature, then I am going to get for temperature. So this is the temperature data. Okay, so we have basically seen how to control even that. So that's what I was trying to tell you. So it is this facility is pretty similar the way in which I have shown you in the Microsoft Excel. Now we basically want to set city as x-axis. So like the set row x-axis and column. So here we want now city as x-axis, that is for each city, and date as a column. So we want to take a look at it in another way. So let's now try to do that. So here you can see now it is going to look like this. However, it's not a nice way of representation. Why? Because here we have made city. So right now it is basically temperature. So let me just make it city. So here you can see it is like this. So now for city, this is the way temperature and the wind speed was there. Yes, it's okay. I can definitely take a look at it, but it is not difficult for me to comprehend many times. So this probably is relatively easy for me to comprehend. Like for this date, this was the wind speed like that. So here it's just another way to represent the same data. Then I can play with it. I can change it to temperature the way in which it was earlier when I executed it. So you can always play with it. So point is, now here we have basically changed it here. So here now index is city. This is very important. And then the columns are the date. That means for this city, for these dates, how the temperature was there and how the wind speed was there. Then you can play with it. Here you can give values. Then you can play with it also. Okay. So this is another way to basically represent the data. So all these things that we are doing is basically using pivot table. We are trying to work on the data representation. Now let's try to play some more. So we'll try to basically read another file where there are very few readings, and these readings are for only say 2 cities only. So here it's not there are 3 cities, but there are only 2 cities are there. So here we have 2 readings of each day. Now the real problem comes is, now we have in the earlier case we were having temperature and humidity. It was for only one reading per day. Now there is a chance that weather department is taking 2 readings per day. Then what is going to happen? So you now have a situation like where basically you have this New York for say 5th of January, you have this data. New York, which is having temperature of 32, then again on the same day you have 36 temperature. Okay, so like that. Sorry, it's a May. So it's for the month of May, for example. Sorry, so it's in the other date format. So here now you can see that this temperature is 32, wind speed is 6. Similarly, again one more reading was taken, say probably later half of the day or whatever. Then the temperature was 36, 7, so everything. So similarly again on 2nd of May it was 28, 33 like that. Similarly for another city in Nagpur, you have this 1st of May and then the 2nd of May. So it's a very limited set of data, and I have told you like you can get this data of New York City temperature is very easily available. For that matter, in general, that temperature data, otherwise also when you do Google, you can get it very easily. So that's not a big issue. So you basically are taking a very small piece of data. Now you want to basically, now what is the issue? Trouble here is, now I want to do, that's why you require aggregate. So now you can aggregate. So suppose because for a particular day I am interested in some sort of an average data. I am not interested in keeping so many readings, otherwise it will be huge and difficult for me to do analysis. So we can just try to do that also. So let me just basically run this. So here what you can see, aggregation can be performed by using the pivot table. So it calculates the average of temperature and wind speed for 2 readings for each day. That means say for example you have morning and this one. So what we have done here, we basically have just done index city and column. So we just have made use of df.pivot table. Earlier we just printed the data. So data was having 2 entries of temperature, 2 entries of wind speed like that. So now automatically it is going to do average for you. So this is a facility that is part of pivot table. Now you want to basically use the numpy function, and we want to make use of the aggregation function basically, and you can have your own basically custom aggregation also can be done. So let's now try to basically play with it. So you are going to have pivot table, index again is city, columns is date. So that is the same thing, columns is date. And now you are going to make use of a numpy function. Aggregate function is equal to np.count non-zero. That means whenever there is a non-zero data. So you can see all the places there is 2. Why? Because there was not a place where the reading was missed. However, when you get huge data, there is a good chance that the reading are missed. So that time this particular facility is useful, like counting of a non-zero. Now you can take the mean, because here we have taken the automatically it has taken average for you. Now we will try to basically make use of aggregate function np dot mean. So we will make use of this numpy function, and now it has basically taken as 92.5. So then 91.5, and then 8.5 and 10. So here we are now controlling what do we want to do. So it's a numpy function. Now if you do not like to have basically aggregate function, that's what I said. So automatically it was providing you the average, but we want to control it in your way. So that's why we are using numpy. So we can count non-zero, then we can count, rather we can calculate mean. Then we can also, suppose I am not interested in mean, I just want to make sum of all the temperature readings that are available to me, and then probably do some analysis later on. So I can use this sum. So you can see this is sum of all the temperature, similarly sum of wind speed, like that. Then you can set the margin. So margin means you are now going to have a all row and all column type of approach. So we will just run this. So here now you can see this what it has done. So here margins is true. I told you like this is the facility which is margin is equal to by default false. But if I just make it true, then it's going to add all rows and columns. So, and it is basically a total or a grand total you can call it. So this data is useful when you are trying to do sort of a supermarket billing and all that. So where you basically are going to do line total and then the column total, so that it matches properly. Here if I just say margin is equal to true, then you can see it has some 92.5 plus 34. So here, and then basically here it is rather it has taken an average basically. Similarly here you can see it has 92.5 and then this one. So again this is average it has taken. So margin takes the average of rows and columns and mentions it in the all rows and all columns. So here same thing here 8.5 and 10, then it has taken average. So that's the beauty. If you want to take an average then and there itself, so you can basically take an average of that. Now we will try to understand the grouper. So I'll just go to the slide. So grouper, I told you it is going to allow us to group sort of group by instruction, and you can select the group depending on the key. So select the grouping column on the target. So we will try to do that now. So here we are going to have only one city information. So let me just show you what is that one city information. So it's a New York temperature for say May, 1st of May, 2nd of May, 3rd and 4th. So it's a 4 days of May, and say similarly 4 days of November. So it's of 11th November. And there you have temperature and wind speed. So this is a very interesting facility grouper, because it is helpful when you try to do the stock analysis basically, because you can group and then you can find out how the stock has behaved in the first half or in second half, and so many things you can actually do this analysis for the data of the stock data, depending basically for the stock prices. So now we have this data. So again I told you this is a very simple data, because we need to understand the concept. So we have this data for 4 days in May and 4 days in November. Now we want to convert it to the date time, because I told you when we want to make use of grouper, so it should be converted into date time like object. So that is what was the basic requirement. So we'll convert it. So for that we are going to convert this date, because there is a date field everywhere. We get a date field. So now this is a date field. We need to convert it into the time series format. So otherwise it will not work. So we need to say pd dot to date time, and then we need to just overwrite that particular column with pd dot to date to underscore date time. So this will convert it into the timestamp. So it's timestamp. The timestamp will be its a type is timestamp. Now you can see that there is a difference. So the way in which earlier it was 5.1, now you can very clearly see it's in that format. If I just try to take the type of that, now you can see this is the type is timestamp. So pandas timestamp dot timestamp. So this is the requirement if I want to make use of a grouper, because grouper works on a frequency. I told you grouper is there is a frequency here. So we need to make use of a frequency. So grouper works on frequency. So now we are once again going to use obviously pivot table. So we are going to draw the pivot table, but we are going to do the grouping based on the frequency. So here we want to make month as a frequency because we have a monthly data. So now it's very clearly, that's why this date is converted into timestamp. So this grouper functionality can automatically find out that this is the month data, and that's why this is a date. So automatically it can group all the data which is related to a particular month. That means here it is May, then there is a November. So that's why we are going to make use of month as a frequency. So now here index is what? Now you see the way in which I am using pivot table. Here when we were using pivot table, index was given as city, and then we were having columns and then say margin if you want or not. So anyway, so index was city and then the columns was date, and then we were having other facility like aggregate function or margin or whatever. Here now our index is different. So index is a group. So that's why we basically are going to make use of a grouper. So here index is equal to pd dot grouper. Now we are making use of this grouper. There we are telling the frequency is monthly frequency, the key is date. So use this date, then only, that's why this is working, because then grouper identifies the data as it's a monthly data, otherwise it cannot. That's why this requirement is very important. If you make a mistake here, then your grouper will not work. So this is very important. So this frequency is monthly, then you basically have the key as the date. So now this index data is ready in the sense this is my index, then I obviously its columns is a city, so city. So let's now run this. So I can now get it. So again, I told you it's going to show the average temperature and wind speed for each month because we have grouped it. Now this is going to show me at the last day of the month, because it now knows that it's a monthly data because we are told frequency day. So for last date of a month, it's going to take average of all the readings and it's going to show the temperature of New York for month of May. Similarly, for New York, it's going to show in the November what was the average temperature for month of November. That's why it is. So you see automatically it has taken November has 30 days, May has 31 days, like that, and similarly for the wind speed. So this is what basically we have seen as part of this presentation. So here we have made use of pivot table. Then we have played with pivot table, like we have used that means we have set x-axis, we have set y-axis, then we have used we changed the index, then we have done some aggregation, then we made use of the numpy functionalities for calculating some say mean, like that. Then we showed how margin works. Then grouper is another interesting thing. So we just have seen how we can basically get the data and use grouper, like it can group the data and then you can show it as part of the pivot table. So this completes our presentation for pivot table. Thank you.